Welcome back to Twist of Fate, a small business podcast where you can find your inspiration to make your entrepreneurial dreams come true. Today's episode is filmed in sunny San Ramon, California, at the headquarters of 3 Steps Forward, and we're here for an episode dedicated to our loving primary care physicians. These are frontline workers that make sure that we all feel good. And there's a particular use case that is interesting called ENT, or ear, nose, and throat, that we're going to talk about an innovative medical device solution from my guest, the founder or co-founder and CEO of Scopi Medical. Anna, welcome to Twist of Fate, my friend.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Okay, so Anna, Scopi Medical, you're trying to change the standard of care to some extent by introducing a new visualization tool to view the nasal cavities and to find issues. And maybe we could talk about that. So tell me more about what you're trying to do with Scopi.
Yeah, we started as a research project actually out of the Stanford Optics Lab. That's actually kind of where the kind of seed of our design and our product came from. And we just did all of these user interviews and talked to, ear, nose, and throat specialists, talked to patients, talked to physicians, and found that it's actually the number one cause for ineffective antibiotic prescriptions in the United States. And it's the cause of like 63 million visits to primary care practitioners. And that is just basic, nasal infections or, blocked nose. And there's just no real tools out there to actually diagnose what is going on.
So blocked nose means, I catch the flu and it's like, this nostril doesn't work and, I'm having problems. Yeah. Or is it acute, chronic, or both?
It's usually chronic, so it's that for 4 months. Imagine last time you had flu, and they just extend that for 4 months. That's kind of the base to be considered chronic. It's a condition that like 30 million Americans have, and the treatment failure rates are so high, just because there's no effective diagnostic tools at the place where care is actually happening. So what's happening right now is that all of these patients are undergoing treatment failure, and they're just going back and getting multiple, ineffective treatments, and then being sent to a surgical center where they're, waiting a long time to have that visit. They're having a really high, expensive visit. Very, very few of them actually need surgery. It's just the surgeon is the only one that has the tool to even look at what's going on. And that just, as an engineer, that just really frustrated me. And I was like, these devices cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but all they are is a tiny camera. And we can build that and not only make it smaller and more affordable.
Anna,
yeah.
You are a high IQ talent player. So you have to forgive my ignorance. Can you break it down for me and my audience? So these 30 million people experience this. They go to their primary care physician. What's the standard of care now? Like, what happens now?
Yeah. What happens now is that the doctor has really basic tools, like sometimes they use a pen light to try to look into your nose, but they can't see anything. I mean, that's what we hear over and over again when we talk to primary care practitioners. I'm not going to see anything. So I don't even do it. And so I'm just kind of choosing out of 4 possible medications, let's try this one. And if that doesn't work, we'll try another one. And if that doesn't work, we'll try another one after that. But that's not best practice, because there are tools out there that would allow them to choose the better medication from the get-go. And so the patients can get better. So they're
screening for like a growth, abnormal growth, a polyp, or like what are the things that they're, if they can look with the light, which I agree is very crude, like what are they looking for?
Yeah. So the symptom is just a blocked nose, but actually the underlying cause could be, like you mentioned, structural. It could be a non-cancerous growth called a polyp. It could even be a cancerous growth. And it could be a variety of infections, bacterial, fungal, or viral. And those all have different treatments. And if not treated, they can worsen over time and become a surgical requirement. So, there's this huge variety of things that all look the same if you don't have a way to actually look at the area that you need to look at.
Makes sense. So the current method you mentioned is a light, but then there's also like capital equipment things, if they do want to look, they can use now or no?
Yeah, the only one that has access to that is the surgeon. And they will use a tool called an endoscope, a tiny medical camera, to actually look at the area. However, they mean look at the area when they're doing a surgery. Like if they're doing a surgery inside of your nose to surgically remove a growth like a polyp, they would use this device. And so there's nothing really out there kind of between the two.
Point of care, you're in an office visit, there's not a solution they can just pull.
Yeah, there's, it's that 80-20 question, right? Like 80% of the time, they're using this really expensive surgical tool just to look at the area, but it has all of these other features that are just only needed in a pure like 20% of the time. So we said, let's find the best of both worlds. Let's make a simple device that is bringing that kind of visualization in a simple, easy to use way to the place where the care is happening, which is not the surgeon, because these patients are not surgical.
Okay, so this is a handheld visualization tool that you can insert in the nose. And is it ultrasound? Is it like what's the image modality?
Yeah.
Like how is it seeing things?
Yeah. So it really is a tiny medical camera. And when I say tiny, I mean like 2.2 millimeters. So think, like a strand of spaghetti or 2 or 3. So, really small, smaller than a COVID test in diameter. And it just goes into your nose. And that's what you need to be able to figure out, what kind of infection is this? Is this potentially an urgent referral because this could be cancerous? Or is this something that, that I can treat myself as a primary care practitioner? And so that's really the thing that we're enabling. But what the exciting part about this is that in the past, you've just been able to say, hey, here's a device. But what we're able to do now with AI and with machine learning is to help the practitioner not only do the procedure easily, but interpret those results. With this extensive knowledge that we're able to train this data over time, so you have the support remotely from a specialist that you've never had in the past. So that's really the exciting part.
My mind's blown. So if I were to, I may have primary care physicians that are listening to this. So this is a multi-use medical device, but you have like some disposable tips or something that you can pull it out, and then that way, as you are looking at patients, you, dare I say, lack of a better word, like you can screen to find things.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you can triage, you can figure out who really does need a more urgent referral. Or, when you do the procedure, you can really easily just send that recording. And instead of sending the patient and having the patient wait for months, you can just send that recording to a specialist. And they can review that recording of that procedure and determine, yes, this is an urgent and I need to see that patient, or I don't need to see that patient, that medication that you've prescribed is correct. And so the way we've actually designed the hardware is we have that multi-use handle, which is different from how endoscopes are held in the past, making it much, much easier to kind of move with the patient and do this procedure really simply. But then the bigger innovation really is that we have a single-use sterile component, so you don't need to reprocess and you don't put the patient under any risk of cross-infection or anything like that. So we have that razor blade pricing model, but it also just eases time and safety for the patient.
Where are you in the life cycle development? Because this is not something that's available currently. We're talking about a future state, a future world. So where are you at in your engineers and designers? Where are you at now?
Yeah, we have a proof of concept prototype. We've actually just manufactured the second version of that. And we've done testing, bench testing, so in anatomical models. And we've done it side by side with devices that are 100 times more, 10 times bigger form factor. And we've been able to see the same things. And we've gotten really good responses from primary care practitioners, from specialists saying, this is great. Like the device as it is at this low cost, I am just as happy diagnosing the conditions that I need to.
Fantastic. So you are already starting to collect preclinical results for a filing with I'm assuming the FDA, and then you'll move into CE mark later.
Yep. Yeah, we do have an expedited regulatory process called 510K process that we go through for the FDA, so that we can hit the market and start selling to customers. And so we're gearing up for that in about a year, which we think we'll be able to enter the market in about that time frame.
Okay, and breaking the fourth wall, talking to my listeners, I've had a long history of medical device work myself, and I feel one of the things of the decision-making criteria of a physician, there's the rational, economic, and emotional side of things, right? So a good example here is a rational physician would say, if the outcomes are improved, if I find diseases earlier, then the patient will do better. Mm-hmm. An emotional argument would be, that if this is a minimally invasive test and there's less time for healing, that's good for patient satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And third, economically, which I think where we can go, you already went into that if this is a smaller form factor, multi-use, designed to be simple and intuitive, it could reduce the cost of the capital equipment, which is great for the cost of care. Am I summarizing correctly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's, use cases in primary care, but there's also use cases in, in other ear, nose, and throat markets for those specialists, and even outside of that we've looked into other industries, other markets within that. But it's absolutely the case. It's just, earlier diagnosis, improved clinical outcomes, and lower cost of care.
My assumption on your journey in working to solve this, you had mentioned in university, this was a spinoff at Stanford, and then that you're a Stanford alum, right?
Yeah. I did my undergrad in health economics, and in economics focusing mostly on healthcare, and then I really wanted to learn a little bit more about. I wanted to do some physical products, and so I went back and did my master's in mechanical engineering. And kind of in between the two is when we started working on this, primarily working on just an affordable version of this device. And we just didn't have we didn't have the market understanding at that point, but we knew we were frustrated with what was out there as a physical product, and we could do better. We could not only improve on the price, but also on just the product as a whole. And so that's kind of where this project started. And then we turned into a research group at Stanford and spun out about a year ago now.
So building physical devices in our modern world of machine learning and AI is not so common. So what was your twist of fate or your inspiration that led you down the path to explore graduate studies and building things?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the way we think about our product is the physical product is like a hardware platform that allows us to gather data and also analyze that data and build a better product as a whole, because we have all these software products not only helping the hardware do the procedure, but then also analyze the results of that procedure and interpret it and act on those. So for us, we really see the hardware and the software working really closely together. One couldn't exist without the other, because just throwing software products, or even AI is such a buzzword in medical devices or in health tech, throwing that at somebody without them having the efficient hardware to utilize it, I think isn't useful. And on the other hand, there's a couple of examples of just throwing hardware into areas and not actually providing support to interpret those results. So for us, it's so closely integrated that those two have to come together, and that really enables us to make that market change that we're looking at. And I think that also was kind of what drew me into engineering as a whole, is the ability to make an impact and make a large impact and change the way that care is provided as a whole, because we have those combination of those things, and we can therefore move the market and shift the way that care is delivered. And so I think that combination is really exciting to us.
100%, and not just exciting to you. I mean, you have been winning awards left and right. So to my listeners, you don't know, Anna and I met at a Spark Ventures pitch competition that you were a top prize winner in. What other awards or other things that you guys have achieved? There's quite a few, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we've won a number of pitch competitions in the past, a couple of business plan competitions as well. Fishbowl competition is one that we've won, which has been really exciting. We've been in a number of accelerators that have been really helpful. Berkeley Skydeck is a really good example of that. They've done a number of really a very, very powerful community. And then there's a leadership accelerator we've been a part of in Sacramento as well. So a lot of really exciting communities and support, and just as we build and I think move from a place where we were just like, we can build a better product, into okay, the product is great, but we need to build a company that is really sustainably going to be here and going to be one of the largest, medical device and health tech companies. I think there's a huge opportunity here. So that's, I think, the transition that we've made over this last year, is focusing beyond the product, on commercialization, on ensuring that the market is there and kind of ready to hit the ground running once we get the approval to do so.
Good on you, because I know that you've done a lot of voice of customer work, and you're surrounding yourselves with people who have complementary skills. So this is awesome. So I'm just curious about your own journey into this, right? Like you're very humble. Like you said, but like you won a lot of pitch competitions, and I have to sit, shine the light in the uncomfortable side of the room that there's not a lot of venture investment into women entrepreneurs, unfortunately, right? Like less than 10% of all investment, and you had revealed to me that it's even trending down Where does your journey start? Like, did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think it's interesting that my family's not entrepreneurial at all. No. So it's a little bit different from the rest of my family. I think they think I'm a little bit crazy for doing it.
Because you could take the simple cush job and make tons of money and be happy.
Yeah, I had the option when I left school to do a management consulting position, I decided to do this instead because for me it really comes down to I've met those customers and not only do I feel that we can do better in serving them, but I also think it's a huge need and a huge financial opportunity here that we can really make a global change on, and I think that's what I want my career to be. And so I really felt that this is a chance to do that. And so sometimes I feel like I kind of took a proverbial step off a conveyor belt that I would have normally kind of been naturally kind of pushed onto, which has been challenging. It's different to see the way that you thought your early career would go, where you go, okay, 2 years of promotion, 2 years another promotion. It's different in entrepreneurship.
Every two.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no path, there's no ladder. You got to make your own, and so that's exciting, but also for me one of the more difficult parts because my family is much more conservative. My family is not used to that, and so for them, I think it's been a little bit challenging to kind of explain.
And they're internationals, right?
Yeah, my parents are from Germany. I'm German. We moved to the U.S. when I was pretty young.
Where are you from? Berlin, Stuttgart. Where in Germany?
Tübingen.
Ah.
It's a really, really small university town, kind of near Stuttgart. So yeah, my whole family is German, and so I think there's a lot to be said for that immigrant mindset. I'm a first generation American. I'm both American and German, and so I think there's a lot to be said for that. My mom actually, to teach us about business, started a small candy company where we would import German candies into the U.S. when I was really young.
But that's entrepreneurism.
That's entrepreneurism. I think she doesn't love that, but she did it to teach us. She did to teach us that, you can do this. You just start a company. So I think they were always really supportive, my parents, of starting this kind of thing, but it's still different from how they would live their life. It's a risk they're not willing to take, I think.
Anna, I'm not a sugar guy. I'm not a candy guy. But the next time you go to Germany, please bring me back some Haribo.
A selection.
The Haribo is like my thing. The little gummy bears.
Yeah.
They taste different. They're better.
I think this was also before Haribo made it into the U.S. So.
But it doesn't taste the same here. I don't think it's the same.
Yeah, that's true. It might be different. That's true. I never looked into that.
Maybe it's just me, right?
Yeah.
You need to do a user study on
this. Yeah, you do. I mean, I've come back from Germany and my whole suitcase is full. I think every immigrant has this. Every first generation has this. You come back and your whole suitcase is full of things like pudding mixes, something really specific that you can't find here. But I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I will say going to Stanford was, I'm the first in my family that has gone to a university like that. And there's a lot to be said. Huge accomplishment. Yeah, I think so. And there was a lot to be said for the amount of connections that gives you, particularly if you're from a family that, A, no one in my family is in medical or in health tech. B, certainly no one is in the startup world or, anywhere in that space. And so those connections, I think, are incredibly essential. And I just, hats off to especially to entrepreneurs who are doing it without that kind of level of support, because that is a huge, step up and a huge kind of rubber stamp that really helps open up a lot of doors.
No, I agree. I think, and also kudos to you for being a pioneer in your own right, because women in, let's say, health economics reimbursement, or women in mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, electrical engineering, like there's not as many women going and pursuing those careers. So, I mean, kudos to you. I think you're an inspiration for many of my listeners. I don't know if you realize that, but you are.
Well, I feel incredibly lucky, the amount of people that have just really offered that support, or even the fact that, for example, Stanford lets you jump into different areas of learning like that. There's many universities where you would not be able. You have
to stay on a track.
Yeah. You start with 17. You start with 17, and at that time, I really thought I really wanted to work in development economics. I thought I really wanted to work in emerging economies and things like that. And I just realized I think we can make a bigger impact in a different space, and I was able to make that jump. But I think there's many very fortunate to have that opportunity.
Trying to do everything yourself? How's that going for you? 3 Steps Forward is a full-service marketing agency that takes the weight off entrepreneurs and helps them follow through on their ideas. Step up your personal brand, boost your web presence, and elevate your business with our team of marketing experts. Are you ready to reinvent your business? Schedule a consultation today. Visit our website at 3stepsforward.com.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about where you're going in Scopi. Like you're going places. I'm a believer. So, you are now raising funds, correct? So what's life cycle are you? Pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, or where are you?
Yeah, this is our seed round. We're looking for about $3 million. That's kind of the round that we're currently raising for, and that gets us not only through the FDA process, which I've kind of learned. I think initially when you start in this kind of regulated space, you think, okay, the goal is FDA approval. The goal is FDA, but it's so much more than that because it's a surprising amount of health tech companies, hardware, software, fail after the regulatory approval. Correct. Which is shocking and also just a waste of money for everybody involved, just a failure of the system. And so that for us is one of our milestones of our seed, but our real milestone is getting to the market, making our first sales. We've already set up, some partnerships to make that possible, and integrating our hardware with our software, our algorithms that enable that automatic support and diagnosis support. So that's really kind of the goal of our seed round is beyond just approval from a regulatory standpoint, really hitting the ground running and selling.
Breaking the fourth wall, and I think Anna's hitting it on the head. If you're considering medical device or even biotech or pharmaceutical, you have to think beyond the approval. I mean, if anything, I feel if you're a good company, you follow the process correctly, you should assume approval as a success, but that doesn't mean you'll have a commercialization success. Some of you will say, why is that, Doug? Well, I think making a medical device is very complicated because in a lot of cases, you could apply as a predicate device, which makes it easier to get approval, but you could get stuck because maybe the target audience you want isn't necessarily under that indication. Mm-hmm. Maybe your indication of use is too small. Mm-hmm. Maybe your pricing, you're locked. You have a reference price and now you can't get reimbursement, as you as a health economist know this. So good on you to already think beyond the round. Now, are you pursuing, I may have investors listening to you right now. So is this venture funding, private equity funding, angels? What are you looking for?
Yeah, we are mostly looking for venture capital at the moment. We had a very small safe note that we opened up because actually when we went to our customers, we went back to the customers that we interviewed, we had a number of primary care practitioners and ear, nose, and throat specialists asked to invest in the company.
I'm not surprised.
And that, as a founder and CEO, that really just, meant a lot to us, and that's why we actually opened our round a little bit early to have some of those, future customers be a part of our company. So we're just closing that now and opening up a larger priced round at the moment.
Interesting. Now let me ask you, because Anna, you're very, I think you're very cool. Well, are you at all thinking only venture, or have you considered crowdfunding? There's Seed Invest, there's Start Engine, there's Kickstarters, there's all these. Yeah. I'm sure at Stanford, they're talking wow, there's a lot of non-traditional methods to raise funds. Yeah. Curious, is there a particular reason you wanted to go VC?
Yeah, in medical, because of the amount of funding that's required until we get to market, just compared to, more traditional consumer products that have been on those kind of crowdsourcing websites, it's not something that we initially looked at quite as much as I think we could have. We got a lot of funding through grants, which has been really supportive. I mean, we did NIH? Everything till now. We did NSF mostly. NSF. And then a couple of other grants as well from, I believe, through Stanford and through the NIH as well. The Stanford Medical Center, the FDA has a program called the Pediatric Device Consortia, which we've gotten a grant from as well. And so I think there's a lot of non-dilutive grant funding out there that has led us to all the way up to our proof of concept, really, which has been enormously supportive and helpful.
And that may be validation for a lot of the VC investors too, right?
Absolutely.
Winning, I think that's a lesson learned for many of my listeners, is as you win grants, as you win awards, you got to take credit for the win, right? You got to tell everybody you did it, right?
Yep. And I think that's the other thing too is especially coming from like more of a research background where I think I was a manager, I'm having to transition from being a manager to being a leader, which is very different than I thought. I kind of thought they were synonyms to some extent. They're not, it is a lot more sales and a lot more kind of, learning to run a business. And I think to some extent separating, as much as I believe in our product, separating that from the company, because this is a company that, exists into multiple products, and, we're expanding past this initial product as well. So I think that's the learning that we're going through the last couple of months, especially.
You're a manager and a leader, sometimes at the same time, but the expectation now, I would say that the leader is what your organization needs you to be. Yeah. How do you define these roles? How do you pivot in change conditions? Because I know clinically, I've seen you the way you look at things. Like, you're definitely a manager operationally, but you're a leader too. So could you tell us more about that?
I think the leader really is about, not even just talking about the day to day, but it's about I was thinking around corners. So it's talking about where the company or even just other companies will be in 5, 10, 15 years, and not immediately what needs to be done today, but in a way that everyone understands what needs to be done today so that we can get to where we're going 5 years from now, versus I think a manager is much more operational. They frame break in a different frame of months or years to today. And I think the leader really needs to be more of a sales perspective or more of a future looking perspective where we're saying, okay, regardless of what you're doing today, here's where we're going as a company and here's where the market is heading in the future.
No, I love it, Anna. And of the great leaders I've been able to work with in my career, the term I would call is shared vision. Mm-hmm. And I, as a Spark Ventures judge, I'm, revealing myself, like, I gave you the highest score for your pitch. And I think whether you realize it or not, or consciously or not, like, I shared in that vision, seeing you there.
Yeah.
Now, what's that like for you to pitch? Because definitely scientist, engineer, like, a lot of people would think even you're an introvert, but you're definitely not an introvert. I mean, maybe you don't think so, but I don't think you're an introvert. So what is your experience in pitching like?
Yeah. And that's something I had to learn. It's something I really had to learn, especially I don't feel that my economics background helped me with that, and I don't feel that my engineering background. It's a whole set of different muscles that you have to learn. And I think to hit on it right, you also have to be the right amount of optimistic and conservative, because that I think is a difficult realm that everyone has to fit into themselves. But it is that shared vision. And it's, I think, too, coming to the realization that investors or advisors or anybody that you're bringing to this table, giving them equity and having them be on your team is worth so much. And I think it took me a long time to understand that pitching isn't just buy into my vision, it's come on board and let's do this together. And I think a lot of people, especially initially, I thought, giving up equity is like, it sounds like giving it up, but it isn't. You're buying someone's participation who's going to be on your battlefield with you, who's going to be at your side. And I think that change in vision really helped me pitch better and understand why I'm doing this.
My thought process on where you are and how your development is, like, I saw you win an award, I believe it's a top 30 under 30 or something like this. And I feel, especially coming along, I do think ageism exists. I think it's real. I think it's real everywhere, by the way. But I think you clearly demonstrate youth is not a crutch. You deliver fresh perspective, fresh eyes. So, again, kudos to you. I'm really impressed with that. So then what you're now seeking in terms of fresh perspective is some new blood and new troops on the battlefild, right? So maybe you want to talk about what you're recruiting for Scopi.
Yeah, well, we're just so excited because of this venture capital that we have coming and just additional investors that have come on board that we're able to grow our team further. And we put we put a high focus in our team on diversity, and that's diversity both in terms of, academic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, race, all of those things, and gender, of course, which is I would say especially difficult in the medical space, in the engineering space, as you mentioned. And so that is really important to us, but also, experience and expertise. And we do tend to bias towards the side of more expertise and more experience, partially because I myself have a little bit less experience. And so to kind of balance out the team, we do tend to look for more experienced people who have done this before, people who have, in
the med device industry or in the care scenarios that you're looking at.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's interesting, we actually decided not to publish job descriptions per se, because we are just looking for really excited people who maybe have one or two of those pockets, like maybe they have commercialization experience bringing devices into primary care for the first time. Maybe they have regulatory experience bringing an ear, nose, and throat device through the regulatory process, or maybe they have experience working with regulatory codes for the first time and bringing that into a new area. And we see our team right now, our founding team, is right now we're covering everything, and we will shift and we will move into new areas to make up for those people that are coming on board, really see our vision as a double bottom line company, and we're going to shift to make space for those people, because that's kind of who we are, is we're like a dynamic blob that's moving and making space for the right people, and that's kind of the way that we look at our building our team at the moment.
This is great, and I'm going to break the fourth wall and talk to my listeners out there. I know it's a hard time out there. There is projected job loss, over 100,000 jobs this coming quarter, but Scopi is hiring. Anna is hiring. So if you want to be put on the front line when she yells charge, you need to get in contact with Anna.
Yeah,
so
we love that.
Anna, something I was just curious. So as a female entrepreneur, did you have any role models or mentors that really had an impact on you in your development?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Especially, I think most of my role models have been male, and I would say there's a good distribution because of how I approach. I feel that if we make impact and profit, I feel like that's the most sustainable way of building a big company and building a big business. And so I think my role models have kind of spanned that realm, from like nonprofit leaders all the way through, traditional C corporation, big businesses. And I think in my review of that, most of the women that I've really admired in how they've led their companies have been more on the impact side of things. And I think that's a transition that we're kind of seeing a little bit more, is, a greater kind of mix of the two, and an understanding that, you could, in my view, you can't really have one without the other if you really want to go strong in either direction. And I think that's the learnings I've gotten from a lot of the female and women mentors that I've been fortunate to have in the past. They really have a huge eye on impact, and how I would say that impact and customer understanding builds their company more. And I think that's moving over and becoming a bigger part of more traditional business as well.
I would agree. And Anna, just to disclose, back in my old corporate life, I joined at a very large Fortune 500, the Women's Information Network. And I did that as a manager. I'm trying to understand my inner she. Like, the idea behind it is I had a lot of female employees that, as a male, I know I have certain blind spots that I wanted to understand. Like, the first time one of my top performers was pregnant, and I learned through this information network that, to be a high performer means that, she didn't want to take a step back. She didn't want to tell me about that. But at the same time, it's like, hey, this is the birds and the bees. Like, we have to talk about these things. So that's why one of the things I learned was access to mentors, access to sponsors. I don't feel it's not an even playing field for women in business. I don't think it is. I don't think there's as many data points, but that's why I wanted to see your experience with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think there's also, I do hear often that I'm pushy, that I'm a know-it-all, and that I'm like arrogant, which I think it is something that is a little bit of a gendered commentary. And I think too, to find mentors, you have to be a little bit pushy, you have to be a little arrogant, and you have to say, this is where I'm going. And as much as I know where I'm going, I am confident that will change, and that doesn't subtract from the fact that I have a plan. And I think that to find advisors and to find mentors, I think you have to hit the kind of sweet spot of, I do have a plan, but I also am here for support, and a plan might change, and there's going to be things that push us left and right of that, and I need support to do that. And I think that you have to be pushy a little bit more than I think traditionally that gender has allowed to happen.
2 points of encouragement for you and my female entrepreneur listeners. I feel one of the characteristic criticisms of leaders early on, men or women, will be that they're too pushy, that they don't conform to existing standards. And if anything, in a lot of cases, if you're going to create change, you're going to create enemies. So, you got to push through it. I know you do, but, that's my advice to many of you is maybe that's okay. And you're right. I do think some of the criticisms are unfair to women, but you got to push through it.
That's the other thing, right? Yeah, it is, getting up. To me, I think sometimes it is getting up and hearing 10 no's in a day and 3 yeses, right? And the 3 yeses have to carry you through the next day where it might be 12 no's and 1 yes. And then some days you have a lot more kind of smaller wins and bigger wins. But that I think is the largest learning for me. It is just getting up and hearing the no's. I think one of the best kind of pieces of advice that we got was again, I come back to this, over and over again, but it's talking to your customers, right? We did 2 weeks where we talked to, I think it was almost 40 doctors, and we picked up the phone and we went through Google Maps and we started calling. And it was just a lot of people saying, I'm busy. I don't have time to talk to you. Who are you again? Or just hanging up, or, and I think you have to just get through that. That's what it is. It's no different than just picking up the phone and starting and getting up every single time they say no and just doing it over and over again. And that's a muscle you train. And to me, that's kind of an example of
And a real commercialization is learning about rejection. Mm-hmm. Is that hard? I mean, you're such a high IQ player. Was that difficult at first to deal with rejection?
It is very different from academics, where it's like gold star on the next test. And I know exactly what's on the test, and I can read the book, and, that there's practice questions at the end of the chapter. And it's not like that in this here. It is hard to set yourself a goal that is the right amount of stretch that you think you and the team can hit that without making it there's not enough progress in the next couple of weeks that need to be done. Because I think that's the challenge is learning when it's your first time to set those right goalposts for you and the team. I think that's the most difficult part, and then celebrating them when it happens, but then quickly moving on to the next one.
Yeah. Well, Anna, listen, you have my respect. I think you're one of the top entrepreneurs to watch in the future. Is there any recommendations or insights or anything you'd like to share to my female entrepreneur listeners, or anyone that is looking to innovate in the med device sector, like from your perspective?
Mm-hmm. I would say, again, talking to your customers. And I think there's a inherent, when you start, especially if you're not an entrepreneur to start with, if you've not done this before, I think there's an inherent desire to hold an idea close to your chest, not share it. Like maybe someone's going to steal your idea, for example. And I think that is a folly that you have to overcome, because your idea is only going to grow if you share it, because your experience may not be the experience of other people in reality or in numbers, but it's gonna improve the more you share it with others. And there's obviously a point in which there's some people we don't want to share it with, but by and large, most people are excited about that innovation, especially in the medical device space. If you're saying we're improving clinical outcomes or reducing cost for patients, everyone's on board with that. The whole system wants that. The physician wants that. The patient wants that. The payer wants that. The government wants that. Everyone's on board. And I think there's a lot of willingness to help initial ideas. And so I would just say share it, and you'd be surprised how many people are willing to chat about it and offer improvements.
Fantastic, Anna. Now, I'm hoping that some of my listeners are as inspired as I am to get on the front line and have a Yale charge. If they want to get in touch with you, either to invest, either to follow your progress at Scopi, or even if they want a job, how would they get in contact with you?
Yeah, my email is anna@scopimedical.com. That's my email. Happy to answer any questions. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, Anna von Wendorff, extremely German name. I'm happy to chat with anyone.
It's a strong name.
It's a very strong German name. So I'm very happy to chat with anybody. I think we're really excited what we're doing here, and we're excited to grow the team and kind of move forward and get to market and answer the problem that our patients and providers are asking to be answered. So,
for many of you that are out there, you can clearly see from the passion and the fire of Anna that, I'll be honest with you, youth is not a crutch. Ageism is not a crutch. Genderism isn't a crutch. The only thing as an entrepreneur that is holding back or holding you back is you. So my view is break some barriers, go in new directions, be bold, be courageous, represent your family, and represent your legacy, because, change was difficult, but can be achieved with planning, passion, and optimism. If you like this content, please share, subscribe, maybe join our Patreon. We're trying to get this content out there to be free and accessible to all that are seeking the path to entrepreneurism. If you, in the future, if you check out Twist of Fate, check out Anna, check out all of our guests that are trying to show you how to make your dreams come true. With that, I look forward to seeing you on the next Twist of Fate.
Twist of Fate is hosted by Doug Younger. It's produced by John Lundvid and Matthew Brown at Ezo Creative. Moni Yu designs our graphics, and Enrique Pimentel manages our digital life. Our theme music is by Jamie Bathgate. Special thanks to all of our patrons. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/twistoffate podcast. Thanks for listening.